Hello, welcome to Reversal of the Muse. My name is Laura Marling, and in these series of conversations, if you're just joining us, I'm talking to various women and men about working in recording studios and female creativity and how female creativity is received in those male-dominant environments. As I've said before, I don't believe that female creativity or male creativity is necessarily bodily gendered. I think a balance exists in many respects in everybody. Today, I'm talking to Jonathan Wilson and Karen Elson, who at the time when I spoke to them a few months ago now, they were making a record together, making Karen's second solo record. And I was very happy to get the call to come and sing some backing vocals on her record from Jonathan, who's a friend of mine who was producing. So I went to join them quite late in the studio, and they were having a very jolly time. And something about the dynamic of how they were working and the record that Karen was making and the significance that it had for her really touched me. To put Karen in context a little bit, she is a high fashion supermodel, and she's had a phenomenally successful career. And she's a classy cat, and she's a very, very, very lovely, gentle person. She's from Manchester. She lives in America now. She has done for a long time. And she has the look of delicacy and the temperament of delicacy that is extraordinarily feminine. And the record that she's making is beautiful, and she sounds like a bird. It's all this gentleness. She couldn't have made it with a more perfect person than Jonathan, I don't believe, because Jonathan is an incredibly able and sensitive musician, producer, and I think that's a really interesting dynamic for her to feel safe in the hands of someone like Jonathan and to make the record that she was making is really interesting to me. So I wanted to get them both to talk about it together, and we did. And it was very nice. Unfortunately, it was one of the earlier recordings for this podcast, and I hadn't quite mastered, ironically, the sound design of them. And so you can hear quite an intimidating roaring fire in the background. Please ignore that, and don't let that make you too hot. And yes, here you go. This is my conversation with Karen Elson and Jonathan Wilson. And please come and see us again at Reversal of the Muse. You've worked with a lot of women this year, which we've joked about quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But
chicks dig me.
But we do. But he's very sensitive. It's very like.
Well, you have a quality that's sort of. I'm not even being one of your more awkward friends. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of you, and I think that's a really important quality.
I can tell Jonathan anything. If there was a fly on the wall to our conversations, I could talk to you about anything that's going on.
And not be afraid that there will be some sort of wall put up, or whatever. That's a nice quality, which
and it's the same as a producer. We could try anything, and you'd allow anything to
that process. Yeah,
you'd allow that process, but at the same time, I trust you, and I trust your instincts. But Jonathan, definitely, you do have a way of understanding the subtleties.
I do feel, say for instance, when I walk into a guitar shop in Denmark Street or whatever, that I have to sit down. I have to sit down and play the best piece of guitar music that I can think of.
See, I can't. I seize up and freeze up. We were in Guitar Centre yesterday, and I was like, I am not going to play guitar because I'm terrified. Because it's too much pressure. Oh, it's awful.
No, but that's...
Meanwhile, you were playing the most beautiful stuff. And
but that's a male environment and not sort of...
highly
well
male,
said,
right? And a special type of male too.
I mean,
when I go in those shops, my hair stands up on edge, and I automatically become just a total dick.
You start beating your chest.
No, I just become so.
It becomes you ashamed
challenging to the employees, those employee guys that know everything. They know all the answers.
You're not going to get your discount soon. Don't say too much.
They know all the answers. They know what you should buy. And this is, to me, I look like another dude. They even act like that, so I can't imagine how they act like to you.
I mean, it is appalling. Somebody needs to do something about guitar shops for women, because it's crazy. I go in and I get treated like absolute.
Isn't that wild? Isn't that?
Yeah, it is kind of wild.
I mean, but it's very indicative of the music business too. I mean, I I have a whole other career as a model, and you'd think that I'd be very used to being sort of objectified, but in a strange way, that profession, I've sort of forged my own path and go out of my way to not be objectified. But sort of musically speaking, I've had so many experiences, you know, be it with like the radio person or whatever, where I'm just literally being treated like I'm a slab of meat or something, and being talked to in a way that isn't respectful. And I really did struggle with that when I first put out my very first record, was being objectified in a wholly different way, you know, in a way that I was used to it as a model, because I'm not like a Victoria's Secret model. I do weird shoots with weird people, and it's never been about that. But to be in the music business can be quite male dominated, and it was a real struggle at first to sort of be talked about in third person by somebody. I mean, I would have so many meetings, or sort of, you know, you're going to meet somebody at, I don't want to say names, but like a web streaming service or something, and listening to sort of somebody at the label or whatever talk about you like you're just on the market stall to be sold. And I really did struggle a bit with that, to the point where now I have a real great team of women in my life. And I don't know, you know, not to be anti-male, because obviously I'm not, but I really felt like I needed to have a strong team of people who, you know, where I can call the shots, you know, and
they're people who are sympathetic
to what, you know. I'm a mother, I've got 2 children, and I'm not going to play that game, you know, and I'm not going to let myself be put on a pedestal to be kicked down. I'd rather just be me. And
that's fascinating. That idea of being put on a pedestal to be kicked down is the classic female cycle.
Absolutely, absolutely. You see it played out in so many forms, and I've had that happen to me, you know. I mean, I've had it happen to me in life in general, that I really, at this point, it's not something I want to allow to happen.
Yeah, and you do, once you sort of recognise that's brilliant, because you can say, actually, no, this is.
And I think, again, like the experience of making this record with you, Jonathan, where you do have a lot of like empathy for the process, but also you're very good at reading people, you know, reading the sort of the spirit of what a person is. And I think because we're great friends, you know, that you know the fundamentals of what I am as a person, you know, so you weren't going to sort of throw me in a situation that I couldn't, that was uncomfortable.
Right.
At
No,
all.
I've seen, I mean, relating to the male-female dynamic in the studio environment and stuff, I have seen a lot of like examples where the bad side of that, where the guys are like, a guy just figures that a girl can't play the instrument and can't set up the mic, so just like get out of my way, and like I'm going to do this, and I'm going to show you how, you know, like the way that this whole thing is like it's going to work, blah 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 blah. And I've seen that, you know, I've seen women sort of get shut down to the fact where they can't even be creative, you know. And it's just like
and the whole point of making a record is to be creative, really.
Whereas you know, like what sometimes men don't realize in that environment is we created these beautiful tracks, and this angelic, you know, spirit is there, you know, on this song.
It's a collaboration.
Much preferable to like some dude on the mic, you know.
But do you Jonathan,
you know,
think that there is? I mean, you've worked with a lot of men as well, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
I'm interested currently in this idea that I'm a big believer that in feminine and masculine difference, that there's a big difference to the way that the feminine approaches things to the masculine.
Right.
Jesus. God, terrible. Turn that shit off.
And in the studio environment, I think my approach is different to the masculine approach. And I've now, you know, I produced my last record, previous record.
Right.
And it was really interesting because I didn't feel, that this is a self-imposed neurosis, but I didn't feel afraid of making mistakes, and
Right.
I felt because it was just me and two very old friends of mine engineering.
Right.
It was really interesting to see how much more I experimented and felt in control of things, and I feel like I was able to do that in my own sort of feminine way for the first time, which I'd never experienced. Do you work differently with men than with women? I mean, you must, because
probably, yeah. Probably. When it works really well, it's a really nice partnership. The male and female in the studio. It's really, really nice because there is an inherent like stereotypical aspect to male, sort of nerdy gear guy like behavior. That is it is the way it is. There's just many. Like studio nerds that are usually guys, almost 10 out of 10 to be honest. And so,
I don't obsess over the gear.
But the nerdy dude that's under the board on his back with a flashlight fixing channel 62 or whatever, so the whole process can happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm cutting into your sentence, and I'm going to finish it for you.
Right.
That is something that men are interested in. But do you think that like women? I'm wondering. I'm not positing that this is definitely a thing. But do you think that women have not yet been enough ingratiated or liberated to be part of that mechanical world?
Yeah,
that sort of more
that's interesting. Yeah,
world?
I don't know why exactly that has been, but. Maybe that will be a shift. I mean, and I think that it is. Probably as we speak, that is definitely changing. I think that sort of like the interest in the technical side.
It's so funny because I personally I'm interested in what certain elements of that are, but at the same time, I'm not.
Yeah. No.
And that's just me, I mean, I want to know what the great mics are. I want to know, obviously, what the.
Right.
I think particularly from our studio experience, there's definitely elements of gear that I would get quite obsessed with. But,
some of the instruments that we chose.
Yeah, but then at the same time, to be really honest with you, when I've been debating at my house in Nashville if I should sort of make it a little bit more legit so I can sort of record my music. But then as I was obsessing over that, I realized but some of the beauty of it is
your innocence in that one.
Yeah, and the sort of bare bones to write the song and then pass it on over to Jonathan. But then at the same time I read that girl this is it was quite a strange tangent, Grimes.
Yeah, she's a cat, man. She's
cool.
Amazing. Yeah.
Records it herself, produces it herself, mixes it herself.
But for the point of saying no man had any.
Yeah, and I read an interview with her where she was getting it was a beautiful interview, and I read it and I was like, wow, she actually really has a point. Why aren't more women doing that? And I actually had to sort of ask myself that question. And I was really fired up by listening, reading this interview that she did, that she does all her, she does the entire thing from beginning to end by herself. Personally, I admit fully that I would not be able to do that. I mean, it's hard enough for me to press record on GarageBand, but I'm getting better. I am getting a lot better. I've just, it can be quite daunting. I don't know. I think, but again, maybe it's because it's the male dominance of it where I instinctually think, oh, I can't do this.
Yeah.
But I can.
Yeah.
Because all it takes is...
I shouldn't, I'll let them do it.
Right, and it's been interesting because I record all my,
it's not rocket science,
demos on just guitar and vocal, at least for this record. I mean, I had songs that I'd gone into the studio and done stuff with, but I didn't even sing any of those because it was just, I wanted to give you the bare bones because I felt like that was better for you to at least have a picture, not tainted. But at the same time, I am a lot more from recording with you, a lot more interested in being more knowledgeable about the technical side of sound.
So I have this quality in my personality that is turning out to be a bit more of a quirk than a quality, but I have to know how things work, especially if it seems like it might be a more male interest.
Right.
I learnt to ride a motorbike and then I learnt to take one apart, and I don't want to ride a motorbike.
I think that's incredible.
Yeah, but I mean, that was just sort of obstinance in my personality, and the same with
I wouldn't say it's
obstinance
obstinance though. I actually would say it's curiosity. I think the idea that you would even say it's obstinance is because we've been taught as women
I think that's
to
a
be
feminine
told,
way of acknowledging something, I was just doing it
that we're told that that's how
yeah
women are supposed to be.
Yeah,
I mean, I very much, just to broach that subject, is that definitely the past few years I've really come into myself, I feel, as a woman, but that is because I've embraced both the male and female elements of my personality, you know, and recognize that there's both.
Laura, I wanted to ask you what it feels like to rip most dudes under the table on the guitar.
Amen.
What does it feel like to wipe these little pansies off the floor? What does that feel like?
Because you are an incredible guitar
that's
player,
actually quite rare, and I'm sure it's very rarity for whatever the reason is. I'm not really sure why. There's not a lot of girls that actually rip on the guitar.
Right. Well,
there's many that can kind of play a couple chords and like accompany themselves.
Well, I mean, thank you for opening up that topic, of which I have lots to say. I've done a lot of playing with really amazing guitar players, men, men. I've also taken lessons with a lot of people. So as I got a bit older, I was like, no one's gonna teach me anymore, because my dad taught me guitar.
Right.
And then when I was like 20 or something, I was like, I should start asking people for lessons when I meet them. So I started doing that when I sort of found people who I thought were unintimidating enough to ask for lessons. And I started doing lessons. And I find it much easier learning from women, even though I've only had 2 lessons from women.
Oh, really?
Yeah, much easier, because I'm not afraid. Again, it's that thing, and it just is part of my personality. It's not that I think men are deliberately trying to terrify me. Right. It's just that I'm much more comfortable making a mistake in front of a woman.
I so understand that. I really do. It's so funny that you bring that up, because I actually, speaking of that with the guitar, recently in Nashville sort of reached out to some people I know, and I was like, I really want to start to get better at it and like properly learn how to like play the piano and understand the fundamentals a lot more. And feeling quite intimidated when certain men would say, well, I'll do that, The first woman engineer I met was probably 10 years ago, and she was assisting the engineer, and it has been so tough on her, the engineer, but all the musicians were being so pervy towards her too. And it was this fine line this girl had to walk, and she did it beautifully, but it was like every band that would walk in, all the musicians wanted to seduce her. And then the engineer would get really bitter about it and then treat her like shit. I mean, I honestly was blown away during this session about how terrible she was treated by people who work, I shouldn't say this, but I am saying it, by just people in the studio environment. And I realized that she had to prove herself that much more, but she's an incredible engineer, actually. And she was quite tenacious, and that's what she had to be, was tenacious, just to get her head down and work hard. And she really knew what she was doing. But I kept thinking, I'm like, if this was a guy, it's just very interesting. And I remember being quite aware of how this girl was being treated, and how impressed I was with how she was handling it. But then I sort of, on the flip side, went, well, this isn't fair either. It's not fair that she's being objectified as a sexual object. It's not fair that she's being treated terribly by people because she's being objectified. I mean, it was very bizarre.
It's not fair, and it's not fair to think of the idea of where she goes to talk about that, like that experience.
I should actually have a conversation with her about that, because she's actually a really great musician, really, truly, and it blew my mind. But she was an incredible engineer as well. And
this is what these conversations. So I've done a couple of these now, and you know, they're not anti-man or anything, but like what's been really interesting is where people find their way, where women find their place to talk about that because they don't want to make it anti-man, they just want to express their feelings about it.
It still is, I think, the creation of sound. You know, I mean, obviously there's how many incredible female songwriters, musicians, but the production and how many female producers are there out there?
Yes.
You know, I mean, I'd love, you know, I know a few, but it would be wonderful that there'd be more.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I do think the creation of sound, the technical aspects of it is still such a male-dominated business. I mean,
and I wonder whether there's a feminine version of the creation of sound.
Right.
You know, I don't even know what that would look like, but like, there's a feminine approach to songwriting, expression, musicality, writing, any kind of, you know. And I wonder what that looks like in an engineering sense. Whether there's a feminine quality to engineering.
Yeah, for sure.
I agree.
mean,
I think it actually could be quite
friend of
profound.
mine that I have used on a couple of albums I worked
about
with is a wonderful female engineer. Being on both sides of the glass with her, being in the control room and like the musician out there, that she's the engineer for me to talk to on the headphones.
Right.
And it's so nice for me. I mean, not just. I mean, it's just such a pleasure for it not to be like another dude, you know, who's there's like an ego inherent, you know, thing that's kind of constantly there when I'm talking to like a man, you know.
And there is, I feel it. I feel that in the studio as well.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, like. So that was really, really, really profound to work with her and to sort of. You know, I could just say that I observed sort of just like a patience and gentleness to the process, which was super nice.
A femininity to the process,
which
actually
is really,
I think
really,
would
really
be
nice,
quite
which
beautiful
really
to
fits.
incorporate more of
It really
that.
fits with the process, to be honest.
Right.
You know, I think that now with the recording tools that are like available to folks in their own homes and their computers and Pro Tools and like GarageBand is now a part of the psyche. You know, we'll see a shift of get it out of just like exclusive male kind of
exactly.
kind
And
of
that's why I
dominance.
was bringing up Grimes before, because in the interview she was saying that she gets quite a lot of flack for not being a quote-unquote musician, even though she is, you know. And her point was that there's always some way someone's going to put her down, you know. There's always something that someone's going to say, all right, you're a producer, you make your own music, but you're not really a musician. And she was like, well, what are all those guys doing in the studio, in their own home studios, you know? She's like, they're doing exactly the same as what she's doing. It's just, again, not to be sort of like anti-male, sorry Jonathan, you're in New York, but it's just very commonplace to sort of, if a woman is excelling in her field, to sort of somehow subtly cut it down, to say, oh yeah, she's doing really good, but she's not really a musician. Of course she is. She makes records.
Yeah.
However, whether she's making loops or is on her computer or is playing the guitar herself, she's still creating. You know, like we said before, who's to say an artist can create in many different mediums, by paint, by charcoal, by pencil, by many different mediums. Why is that not the same with music? I just found it very interesting that she's speaking out, and she's being quite a force of nature about it, and she's being trashed in a way.
Well, there's so many interesting.
We can't let the woman actually do it all herself.
Yes,
you know?
lest you be described as tough as old boots, or you know,
because
like
that's the other.
You know,
that's the other thing, is that you can't, like, if you're
the many ways of subjugating a woman.
Exactly, you can't just be all that and still be feminine.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh well, she's very, you know. Then it attaches itself to masculinity. I don't know. It's very interesting, the debate.
Hey cats, we've been talking a real nice time.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Laura. Thanks.
Truly.
very much.